our staff who is who we entrust to do that work, can you say to the board that the things that you're doing, the steps that you're taking, is in an effort to try to make sure, number one, the students are served, but number two, that we're serving them in the most efficient and effective way that we've found to be able to do, and also with some thoughts about that we keep thinking about our own drivers and making sure that we're utilizing them to the extent that we can.
I think we can. We are, again, we're looking at this. We've had the FCMAT review where we've had an outside agency that's also studied our transportation. Like many districts, Mount Diablo has provided transportation to students and sometimes over-provided based on what federal and California Ed Code requires. And we have a fine balance here, and I think that Ms. Hanson has pointed it out, that we need to communicate to our community, and there is a change that we need to make to be efficient and to be effective with transportation. We also have to acknowledge that many of our families rely on that transportation because they are two working families or single parent families. So part of the discussion that we had was when and if to go to this clustering model, when and if to go to more efficient transportation, if we were to have done that in August. And right now, a letter did go out to the families to communicate, and hopefully I'm answering your question, that we've communicated that this clustering is anticipated to happen on January 7th. So we are looking at this at a district staff level, and we're looking at it from a multi-phase lens. We're looking at it always from least restrictive. We're also looking at it from a contract perspective with our bus drivers. There are union issues around them selecting their routes. So there's things that happen with that we have to look at. And then we're always looking at it for the safety of our students. We do not want to put our students in an unsafe situation. So we have to have, again, IEPs on all these students to address their transportation needs. So it's not something that we can change either as a district or as an individual student in a very short term. We have to take a long-term perspective. And the first step of that is to identify where we're maybe over-serving some students and then do staff development and training. And that's where we started today with our staff development and training with our administrators so they understand the process, again, of developing an IEP and identifying related services on that IEP.
So earlier, during the summer, we also had there was also a special ed meeting where special ed families were invited to come and meet with the district, where a number of topics were taken up at that meeting. Was transportation and the issue of clustering part of that discussion?
Yes, it was, and we are also planning 3 more transportation meetings. So at the meeting that we just had, where we talked about transportation with the parents, we had a good turnout, and we brought up some of the areas the district may choose to go. And it was at that level. We may choose this. These are some of the things that we're questioning and looking at. The decision had not been made at that point in time, and we were looking to the superintendent and the cabinet to make a decision on whether we were going to pursue a couple of changes to our transportation. So at that time, the decision was made to make 2 changes at the beginning of the school year. Both these changes were provided to parents in the form of a letter to all of our students' parents who have transportation on their IEP, regardless of what type of transportation they get. We did a bulk mailing in both Spanish and English. So that letter clearly identified that the 2 changes we were making immediately were that we were no longer going to provide a parent option for reimbursement, which is one of the things we've done in the past. And if you have more questions on that, I'll go into details. The second change that we made immediately was unless the student met specific criteria, being medically fragile or a severe safety issue, if they were attending their home school, they would no longer get district transportation. That's the 191 students that Ms. Skokie referred to, where we were transporting students to their school of residence. Those two changes were clearly outlined in those letters to the parents, and it was clear that those changes would go into effect with the first day of school. The last change that was outlined in the letter is this concept of clustering. There was not detailed information in that letter because this is the process that has to go through the IEP team. The IEP team has to decide which students would be eligible, would be able to be put on a type of a school-to-school transportation. So these would not be our students that are at risk of eloping or medically fragile. We wouldn't be having them do site-to-site transportation. So each IEP team has to go through the process of deciding, is this student eligible for site-to-site? That's going to take some time from the beginning of the school year until we can get those students' IEPs held. And we've asked the administrators to do that. At that point, we should know which students we can cluster safely, and we will also be providing more parent information forums. We anticipate, and I'm working with CAC, we had a briefing with them at their government planning meeting that they had around how to step this forward, how to step this out, so our community is aware and that they are well informed. And I'm working very closely with CAC. And although yes, there are some concerns around it, they're looking for the same types of information. The one thing I will share with the board is that most districts, from when Ms. Skokie went to the transportation conference, she found that many districts are using some form of clustering, and we are searching and asking those districts for their transportation policies, and I'm collecting those. So we do have information on how other districts have implemented this. So we're not going into this on our own, but we are seeking information on how other districts have implemented it.
Well, thank you. I think that answers a lot of my questions. And I know I've met with Ms. Skokie, and I know I've met with our general counsel regarding many transportation issues. And you know, I'm very comfortable that we are doing things to try to make sure that our bus drivers get the routes where that's appropriate, that students are ultimately taken care of, because that's got to be the #1 priority, and that we're doing things to try to make transportation and special education budget sustainable financially as we move forward. I think these are critical things to look at, and it sounds like we're doing a good job looking at it, and it sounds like we're doing a good job communicating that to the families and to the community, and it sounds like more work is going on with that. So thanks for the answers.
Can I just ask on the routing with our drivers, how often do you look at that in transportation now? In terms of, because
daily.
Some are under, some are over. Are there,
we have,
how often might adjustments be made with those drivers, and how's the call system go out to those drivers when there's a change in need?
okay, with the over-under part of it, that is done, that's done weekly, as far as my payroll clerk does the timesheets, and she puts out the over-under to my dispatchers. My dispatchers will make sure that, dispatcher supervisors will make sure that anybody that's under, will bring them up to their time before anybody else gets more time or overtime or so on and so forth. That's done that way. I'm constantly looking at these routes. I have my dispatch talking to me all the time concerning either the county routes, the MPS routes, or the Mount Diablo routes. So, and in fact, I'm looking at them all the time on my computer. So between Ms. Patton and myself in the background, taking a look at how, talking about the kids, whether they're in our programs or the MPS programs or the county programs, we're always looking ways of how to take the students back and keep them within our district and our employees.
And what about our overtime now for drivers that are at their 8 hours?
Well, actually, right now,
are you staggering that for under or over?
people do, okay, sometimes the routes will have overtime on them only because of the kids that are on that. We take a look at that, and then what we do is, if we can depending on where the kids are